23rd of June, the people of Britain voted to leave the European Union.
The Article 50 process is now underway, and in accordance with the wishes of the British people, the United Kingdom is leaving the European Union. This is an historic moment from which there can be no turning back. I have just chaired a meeting of the Cabinet where we agreed that the government should call a general election to be held on the 8th of June.
On Wednesday 29th of March 2017, Theresa May's postman in Brussels hand-delivered a 6-page letter to Donald Tusk, the President of the European Council, triggering Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, starting the formal process for the UK exiting the European Union within 2 years' time, with the negotiations expected to begin during May following the conclusion of the French presidential elections. And then on the 18th of April, Theresa May surprised everyone by calling a Brexit snap UK general election to be held on the 8th of June 2017. And this really was a surprise to all, because previously she had repeatedly stated that she would not be calling an early general election. Instead, in a statement issued, made clear that a slender majority in the House of Commons was not large enough to secure a strong Brexit outcome for the United Kingdom. Clearly, Theresa May has calculated that this is the most opportune moment to take advantage of a crippled Labour Party that is still immersed within its own civil war, having lost 40 MPs to the SNP in Scotland. Then there are UKIP, who are literally imploding without purpose following the triggering of Article 50, all of which is manifesting in a landslide generating poll lead of over 20% over Labour. So at this stage, probability strongly favours a Conservative strong election victory on June the 8th. Therefore, in this series of 10 videos based on my 2 pieces of in-depth analysis published at the Market Oracle website, that will be updated as each video is completed and published, that aim to map out the dynamics of the Brexit war that is set to unfold between the UK and the European Union, and what actions the UK needs to take to ensure victory in this Brexit war, including what game theory suggests the UK should do virtually immediately following the outcome of the June 8th general election. So do subscribe to this YouTube channel for forthcoming videos in this in-depth series in the run-up to the June 8th UK general election. As Britain counts down to voting in the general election on June the 8th 2017, the opinion pollsters, who have badly gotten virtually every major election wrong for at least the past 5 years, have been busy putting up a propaganda smokescreen across the mainstream media, from the BBC's Newsnight to the broadsheets, peddling propaganda of margins of error and how they were only out by 2 to 4%, whilst deliberately forgetting that the margin of error meant the difference between getting the election outcomes right or very badly wrong, thus making polls commissioned by the mainstream media propaganda machine at the cost of probably hundreds of millions of pounds worthless. For if the pollsters had got it right, then Ed Miliband would have won the 2015 general election and not David Cameron. The Brexit outcome would never have happened in 2016, whilst Trump will be preparing to star in season 10 of The Celebrity Apprentice instead of prancing around the White House, turning the United States into a joke empire as he attempts to become the Republic's first dictator. None of which matters to the pollsters that the mainstream media requires to publish reams of propaganda, as the polls always were just propaganda tool for the media to peddle their wares to the gullible masses. However, even the pollsters' usually thick propaganda smokescreen was unable to mask the fact that they suck, and so have been busy making statements that they will get this election right. Yes, well, they would have to be really stupid to get this general election outcome wrong, For one does not need to pay hundreds of millions of pounds on commissioning hundreds of opinion polls to understand that Theresa May will win this general election. So why are the fools in the mainstream press still paying the clueless opinion pollsters millions of pounds just to tell them what is obvious to even an 8-year-old child, that Theresa May is going to win? The Tories have a 17 points lead over Labour, which means the pollsters' error margin of 2 to 4%, which has been ensuring that they have gotten every election badly wrong over the past 5 years due to skewing the error in the favour of those who commissioned the polls, just does not come into play in this general election. So, ahead of my forthcoming general election forecast, here is an important reminder to study of how and why the opinion pollsters have been so clueless over the past few years, which exposes the reality that the opinion polling industry, just like economics, primary purpose is so as to produce convincing propaganda to back up the positions of those who commission the polls. Let's start with the last US presidential election, for there was no doubt in the minds of the pollsters, pundits and bookies that Hillary Clinton would win the US presidential election. For instance, the New Statesman's print run for the day after the election featured a picture of Madam President Clinton on its front cover. As an example, the surge in Hillary's FBI political intervention induced polls lead was reflected across the opinion polls based forecasters, such as Nate Silverside, which forecast a 71% probability for Hillary winning the election, up from 67% earlier, against Trump trailing on just 29%. Though Nate's forecast was at the lower end, as the likes of the New York Times gave Hillary an 85% probability of winning. The point is that the pollsters exist within the system, inside the box. However, Trump and BrExit represent what all experienced market analysts and traders understand: a juncture, a change in trend. And the key skill that the pollsters, pundits and press all lack is juncture recognition. For this is a phrase that they are not even aware of, let alone what it means in respect of forecasting election outcomes. I have ridden the crests and troughs of many market waves over the past 30 years, which means I can literally smell and taste emerging junctures. Whilst they are never black and white, as there is always a risk of being wrong, nevertheless, perception is skewed enough to recognise the probability for junctures, which never happens with the pollsters or mainstream press, because they follow systems, and journalists are just that, journalists, who are well practiced in writing reams and reams of verbal diarrhea, but have no practice and experience in recognising major turning points. Whilst before Trump there was Britain's BrExit referendum that the pollsters, markets, pundits and the whole of the British establishment elite had convinced themselves could never happen, and so the BBC declared after the polls closed at 10 p.m. that Remain had won the referendum, with YouGov's poll stating Remain on 52% against Leave on 48%.
So Big Ben has struck 10 o'clock, and we can now start trying to discover which side thinks has carried the day on the basis of the results that come in.
But YouGov have done what they did at the time of the Scottish independence referendum, and indeed also last year's general election, which is to get hold of people whom they've been interviewing during the campaign and ask them, what have you done? And on the basis of that, YouGov are saying that Remain have got 52% of the vote and Leave have got 48% of the vote. So this is the first bit of public intelligence we've got about the outcome of this referendum.
Which even prompted Nigel Farage to effectively concede defeat at around 10:15 p.m, sending sterling soaring to its highest level against the dollar for 2016, and also triggering a sharp FTSE stock futures rally.
Absolutely. I mean, Emily, if the markets were deciding this referendum, they would have already called it for Remain. The pound is absolutely surging on the markets post 10 p.m, post that poll that put Remain ahead. It's nearly at 150 to the dollar. That's a record high for this year, and actually the pound has had its strongest week one of its strongest weeks for nearly 30 years. So clearly investors think, from all the evidence they're seeing from the polls, we think that some hedge funds have taken their own private polling and have probably been having a look at that. They certainly think Remain has had a very good day. Now, clearly, they know not a lot more than we know here, but certainly in terms of the data there, and also FTSE 100, the shares on the FTSE 100 have also had a strong day on the market. So certainly the signals are that Remain has won. Now, markets aren't political particularly. They're not saying Remain has won, that's very, very good news. All they mean is that therefore the uncertainty of what Leave could have brought, they believed, won't now happen. And so therefore we can start focusing on the other type of issues, the other problems that Europe has, but one of them won't be that Britain has actually left.
And so it remained until just after midnight, when the actual results started coming in and all hell broke loose, as the BBC video illustrates, which you should watch and study so you understand just how badly they got it wrong.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. We've got more news about the pound, Kamal.
Well, David, it's absolutely taken a hammering since that Sunderland result, which seems to suggest that Leave might be doing a lot better tonight. It's down 6% in the last few minutes. I mean, that's a hammering that we will not have seen on the market since 2008 in the financial crisis. I mean, that is a very, very significant move. I blogged early on this evening, I said, if the markets have got this wrong with their positive sense that Remain was doing very well, that their internal polls were showing that, there would be an almighty correction in the value of sterling into the markets this morning and into Friday. And boy, are we seeing that. I mean, everyone's going to be watching the next few results to see if that Sunderland result was an outlier, but certainly a lot of traders who thought that Remain had a very, very good night are now selling out of sterling as quickly as they can, and the graphs are remarkable, just almost vertically down at the moment, sterling on the markets.
The polling establishment and the mainstream media had in unison proclaimed the 2015 general election was too close to call, one where Labour and Conservative parties were neck and neck, where even if the Conservatives managed to pull a handful of seats ahead, would still lose by default, as they would not be able to form a majority even with the Lib Dems support, and therefore the Labour Party appeared to destined to win the 2015 general election, all of which was based on a year of opinion polls that consistently presented this consensus view right up until the polls closed at 10 PM. Instead, the reality proved to be the exact opposite, as instead of Ed Miliband walking into number 10, we had David Cameron texting the removal vans to do a U-turn as he raced back to Downing Street before the locks were changed, where this video explained in detail why the opinion pollsters got the UK general election so badly wrong, which was contrary to my long-standing expectations for a Conservative win. In fact, my market-skewed perception had accurately forecast the outcome of the UK general election for 2015 a good 18 months earlier.
Recent opinion polls put Labour 6 points ahead of the Conservatives, which would translate in a Labour election victory. Similarly, the bookies also all favour Labour as the party to win the most seats at the next general election. However, what the opinion pollsters, bookies and mainstream media commentators fail to grasp is the likely impact of an accelerating UK housing market momentum on a general election that is near 18 months away. As this graph illustrates the impact of UK house price trends on general election results over the past 30 years. The key point is that the trend and strength of housing market momentum during the 2 years in the run-up to each general election is a good indicator for the probable outcome in terms of whether the government or opposition party will win, and the likely size of the majority. Taking a more conservative house price inflation rate of 8.5% would imply that the window for an outright Labour election victory has already ended as of July 2013. An election held today would result in a coalition government with a majority of about 35 seats, and that the window of opportunity for a coalition government ends by mid-2014, after which there is an increasing probability for a Conservative outright majority. Therefore, in conclusion, a May 2015 general election would result in a Conservative overall majority of about 30 seats.
And finally, the Scottish independence referendum of September 2014, where the opinion posters painted a picture of a too close to call vote on 18 September, which even saw a 51% to 49% lead for the Yes campaign just a few days ahead of voting, that triggered much panic across the political spectrum and financial markets. However, as my earlier in-depth video analysis concluded, that the actual probability for Scotland voting yes was just 30% rather than the near 50-50 proposition that the mainstream press had put itself into a frenzy over.
So, in my opinion, Scotland will vote no to independence and yes to continuing to extract a Queen's ransom from Westminster. On the other hand, if I'm proven wrong and the Scots like lemmings actually do leap over the cliff, then September 18th should be taken as a strong sell signal to disinvest from the UK and to construct and implement personal exit strategies from the UK that I will write much about in the event of such a calamity.
So here we stand, some 3 weeks to go until the BrExit UK general election, with the pollsters promising that this time they will get this election right, which they will, because Theresa May will win on June the 8th, given the Tories' huge 17% polls lead. The only question mark is how large will a majority be, which my forthcoming forecast analysis will seek to conclude. But even there, it does not take paying pollsters millions of pounds to understand that the Conservatives will increase their majority, which carries a probability of over 90%. So do subscribe to this YouTube channel for that which remains to be determined by how much will Theresa May increase the Conservative Commons majority, and if there exist any opportunities to capitalise from this election. For instance, the betting markets, whilst getting the main event right, may be pointing in several wrong directions where the smaller parties such as the SNP and Lib Dems are concerned.